on this channel. This video has 23 million views, and he made, I think,
Come, the Lord is waiting for us.
An English dubbed video about the situation in the El Salvadoran prisons. Insane.
Next, we will enter an isolation cell, which is where prisoners are sent when they commit an infraction. The only light entrance is a hole in the ceiling. How many people did you kill?
I do not remember.
How many were there?
We have committed different crimes at different times.
Absolutely everything is done in here, from going to the bathroom to cleaning up. Everything is done in here open. This group behind me alone is very possibly responsible directly or indirectly for more than 200 homicides. We are in El Salvador.
Thank you, 34 MKD.
And today we will enter the Terrorism Confinement Center.
That guy was getting cooked by a lot of Latinos because he made this video very pro-industrial prison system.
Largest prison in the Americas with a capacity to house about 40 prisoners, of which today a significant percentage are dangerous.
40,000.
Gang members and criminal leaders considered terrorists. This is a maximum security prison, and this is evident from the moment you are perhaps a kilometer from its perimeter, because there are already security elements that begin to interrogate you. They get out of your vehicle, they do a body search, they check.
Okay. The perhaps makes it seem like this is definitely an AI dub. Immediately, this is an AI dub.
Your identification. Who are you? What are you doing here? They tell me that there are 7 security filters. Those that are imposed, which makes it practically an impossible.
It literally sounds as if it's Luisito himself was doing the dub. I mean, he might have read it.
Mission for anyone to enter or leave without full authorization. In this video, we will know a little of how life is here inside. What are some methods and punishments that are imposed to control today's inmates? What are some of the rules that the country has imposed to control the situation with its criminals? Come, the Lord is waiting for us. Let's give him...
What?
To come in. Of course. They take all your belongings, phone, wallets, nothing. You can get in. It is even very interesting that the prison is built with a technology that does not allow a telephone signal, so that nothing really communicates from inside here.
So it's one big giant Faraday cage. How has this got 23 million views? This channel has 40 million subscribers, dude. It has 43 million subscribers. I mean, think about it this way. Normally, YouTube would never serve me this channel's videos because it's a Spanish-speaking channel.
They also pass you to 1-4 where they search you, they take off your shoes, they even check the thickness of your socks. It is not for nothing that it is defined as a maximum security prison. When a person deprived of his freedom, that is a prisoner, enters here, his whole body is searched with a technology that allows us to literally see if there is anything inside his body. Data capture is taken, and he proceeds to go to the module assigned to him. Oh, by the way, we are able to enter to document with special press permits, but we do not really admit any type of visit. People deprived of their liberty in these types...
The fuck does that even mean? We do not admit any type of permit? What?
of prisons specially designated for terrorists are not entitled to any visits. Nothing about, I want to see my mom, I want to see my wife, my daughter, nothing. You lost that right because of the decisions you made in the army.
Oh my God. This guy, what's up with this guy? Is he like a fucking fascist? What's happening? Is this a fucking mistranslation or is this dude just like insane? He's like, yeah, you made decisions, criminal. First of all, I hope everybody understands that obviously El Salvador has a massive issue with crime, specifically the two American created gangs that, and the irony is not lost on me, the United States of American prison system literally sent back to El Salvador without informing the government at the time. That's right. You know when Trump says like they're opening up their prisons and they're sending their rapists and murderers and drug dealers, like we did that to El Salvador. We literally did that to El Salvador. We did that. That's why they have such a fucking massive exploding militarized gang problem in the country. He's explaining the viewpoint of El Salvador, but it's true that in the original video he doesn't seem to frame the jail as a bad thing. So, what? It's not AI, it's just a literal one-to-one translation because of the word he uses, the mannerisms. Pin me, I'll explain. So, Bukele is Palestinian and originally rose to power, as we talked about time and time again, as like a bit of a leftist guy, and then very quickly became a crypto guy. And now on top of being a crypto guy, he's now also like created this mass prison and is dumping anyone and everyone that is even remotely tangentially related to any of the gangs in El Salvador. But because the gang violence in El Salvador is like unimaginably bad, this kind of like almost dictatorial action, or not almost, like straight up fucking dictator style action, is not necessarily perceived as like as damaging as you would think. As a matter of fact, it has actually got him a tremendous amount of praise, as far as I understand. Partially, once again, due to the fact that the gang violence situation was insane. Who's paying the price of El Salvador's war on gangs? Oh, this was the video I was supposed to watch originally. Did it solve the game? Did it solve the crime problem, or are the gangs still operating? As far as I understand, the gangs are still operating, but nowhere near the same severity as they once were. However, the real issues are not on the way to deal with violent crime, which, by the way, obviously there are much better ways of trying to deal with violent crime in this way. Because this is not like a long... This is not a... He sounds based as fuck. I'm confused as to why you're against him. I don't know if you know this, but like I am a believer in rehabilitation over incarceration. This is going to cause unimaginable long-term problems. You cannot just simply take people and like trap them in an area and be like, all right, we're done with it. I live in the United States of America, and let me tell you, we did that, and it's really bad, and it doesn't work. The other problem here is also that given the severity and given the streamlined approach to dealing with this, given the streamlined approach to dealing with like crime in this incredibly ultra draconian fashion, you're going to throw a lot of innocent people in jail for being tangentially related to a group that might even be fucking threatening you to do the crimes. Because when we're talking about like a narco state, a lot of the people that are joining MS-13 are not joining because they want to. They're joining because they're fucking threatened. And they have no way to prove their innocence. at all. Or family members of criminals, like they're doing dragnets. And it is completely removing them of any kind of human rights. And it is legitimately terrifying. It's especially terrifying, and I believe it's a testament to like how bad the crime issue was in El Salvador, because he is fucking insanely popular. Also, a lot of informal economies comprised of jobs connected to the gang, so the people getting the most fucked are those who had no choice but to participate rather than the bosses. One issue country? Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It is the issue for understandable reasons. Make no mistake. El Salvador crime rate statistics for 2018 was 53.31%, which was still at a decline of 15% from 2017. Oh my God. He won all of Salvador in Congress yesterday. The PNLY opposition to win renounced her party and went independent. It should also be mentioned there is still no legal right to an attorney if you get arrested, and thousands of inmates have not had a trial. Oh yeah, exactly. There are also many reports of journalists that have reported him on him badly being put in. It's awful. I've got an uncle that's literally old time Marxist. He's got a Che tattoo and he sounds like this. I try to explain to my family, and it's just not processing. The crime situation in El Salvador was horrendous. The draconian response was shown massive improvements, but as you said, unimaginably cruel long-term circumstance. Surely a functional military-powered police state has turned out well historically in Central South America. Yeah. It's so funny that people don't understand like what the implications of such a thing are. What the implications of such things are. But of course, when you got 53% crime that is on a decline, mind you, of course people are going to be like, yeah, no, actually it's pretty awesome.
But first, a special report from El Salvador, where there are growing concerns about the number of children and women being imprisoned without a fair trial.
Oh, what a start. What a start to the fucking subject matter. Growing concerns of the number of women and children being imprisoned without a trial. It's like one of those things where it just got progressively worse as the sentence continued, dog. What the fuck?
The Central American country introduced tough laws last year to tackle the shocking numbers of murders and violent crime carried out by gangs. But the United Nations, among others, say the measures have come at the expense of human rights, with arbitrary arrests, torture and deaths. In 2015, there were more than 6,500 murders in El Salvador, the worst murder rate in the world. By last year, the number of murders had fallen by 92% to fewer than 500. The current prison population there has now swelled to between 90 and...
Oh, it's not 53%. It's 53 people per 100,000. In 1994, it was 135 per 100,000.
And 100,000. But more than 1,000 children and 8,000 women have been arrested and detained. And one investigation found only 30% of those arrested actually have links to gangs.
Yo! Yo! What the... Yo, the dude's like, hey guys, I built this mega prison, and honestly, if we just basically put everyone in prison, then no one is a criminal. No one can do crimes. It's crazy. Dude, it is fucking terrifying how popular he is for this, by the way. People love this shit until they go to jail.
Our correspondent, Dan Rivers, travelled to El Salvador and sent this report.
In El Salvador's war against gangs, there is no mercy. Inmates are treated like enemy combatants, prisoners of a war where the rule of law is often ignored. The country's new mega prison is the largest in Latin America, space for 40,000. As this footage released by the government shows, some are barely adults. Once feared members of the MS-13 or Barrio 18 crime networks are off the streets and forced into submission.
My life ended the day they took my children away from me.
Yvette Toledo lives with the legacy of their murderous reign.
Tattoos equals criminal. I mean, this is the one case where, like, you know, I mean, very specific tattoos, of course. I'm willing to bet that if you have any tattoos whatsoever, you might get in trouble in El Salvador. But, like, yeah, it's like the Yakuza. They get very specific tattoos to designate what gang they're a part of. It is literally. Notice how a lot of those tattoos have 13 on them? That's not an accident. You know what I mean?
She has permanent
Nobody's like, oh, I really like this number.
police protection after her son and daughter were decapitated by the gangs.
Mi vida ahora es bien diferente en todas las áreas.
My life is very different now in every way.
La mitad de mi vida, sino que
They didn't just take away half of my life. They took away my dreams and the future I had with them.
But the anguish isn't confined to the victims of the gangs. Plenty of innocent people have been rounded up as the government tries to tackle them. Carla's husband Milton is being transferred to the mega prison after a police raid last year,
The police killed them, they shot them with guns.
in which she claims officers executed her cousin and beat her.
That was a horrible.
Yeah, by the way, good point from a chatter, but this is the kind of people that are seeking asylum in the U.S., by the way. Like, these are the people who are like, hey, you kind of fucked up our country. Can we come there? Because, like, they killed my fucking cousin, and they said I'm next. It is like, it is the most insane thing because, like, this is a gang that was directly created in Los Angeles. Okay? Straight up. They were arrested, imprisoned, done all of that. And then the American government's policy was to fly them to El Salvador, knowing what they know, having the connections that they have with America so they can have a steady flow of weapon shipments and shit like and have like direct access to the marketplace. Flew them to El Salvador, did not tell the El Salvadoran government at the time that they were actually MS-13 gang members that they were shipping to the country, and just fucking flew them in. It's nuts. The Mara Salvatrucha, or MS-13, is perhaps the most notorious street gang in the Western Hemisphere. While it has its origins in poor, refugee-laden neighborhoods of the 1980s Los Angeles, the gang reach now spans from Central America to Europe. A predatory criminal organization, the MS-13 lives mostly from extortion, but the gang's resilience owes to its strong social bonds, which are created and strengthened via acts of violence, mostly directed at their rivals and one another. Their activities have helped make the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras one of the most violent places in the world outside of a war zone. Truca? Maras Salvatrucha. Anyway. The U.S. Department of Treasury categorized the group as a transnational criminal organization, the first such designation of a U.S. street gang, though the MS-13 criminal proceeds do not even approach those of their counterparts on that list. The U.S. government has also charged over a dozen MS-13 leaders in, it means trout saver. Okay. The U.S. government has also charged over a dozen MS-13 leaders in El Salvador with terrorism, marking an unprecedented escalation in the country's fight against international street gangs. The gang has suffered a near fatal blow in its spiritual home, El Salvador, following a historic security crackdown implemented by the administration of President Nayib Bukele, Palestinian, by the way, Palestinian descent, that has seen around 2/3 of his broader membership thrown in jail. History is, it was founded on poor, marginalized neighborhoods of Los Angeles. As a result of the civil wars racking El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua, refugees flooded northward. Many of them wound up in California, living amongst the mostly Mexican neighborhoods of East and Central Los Angeles, as well as San Fernando Valley. While the Mexican gangs reigned in the local underworld, the war-hardened criminals, quickly organized themselves into competing groups, the strongest of which was called Mara Salvatrucha, Stoners, or MSS. The origins of the name are still disputed, but Mara is a Central American term for gang. Salva refers to El Salvador. Truca is a slang term for clever or sharp. Salvatrucas was also given the name of the locals who fought against William Walker, an ambitious businessman and a proponent of slavery from the United States who tried to subdue various parts of Central America with a small army in the 1950s. Walker, after a brief stint as the self-proclaimed president of Nicaragua, was overrun and executed by Honduran locals. For their part, the Stoners were composed of refugees from El Salvador in the Pico Union neighborhood who spent most of their time listening to heavy metal music, drinking, and smoking. With time, the gang evolved, shedding their original Stoner image, and the MSS became MS. The gang's rivals took note. Conflict between the MS and the 18th Street, Barrio 18, was particularly fierce in and around Los Angeles. The fighting put the gang on the radar of officials who began to jail them in large numbers in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Inside the prison, the MS was forced to bow to another master, the Mexican Mafia, or La M, for short, whose power extended from the jails to the streets. The Mafia's umbrella, known as Sureños, included many prominent gangs and stretched into much of the southwest of the United States and Mexico. The MS-13's subservience afforded the gang more protection in the streets and in prison. In return, the MS provided hitmen and paid the Mafia regular quotas from their criminal proceeds. It also added the number 13, the position M occupies in the alphabet, to their name. Thus, MS became MS-13. What? God, MS is boring as fuck to talk about. Gonna go mainline some Fenty? What the fuck? Kaya, stop licking your arm. Why do you keep licking your... Kaya, stop it. Freaking me out. You got an issue or something? Why are you licking your arm? What are you doing? He's gonna get a hot spot. By the mid-1990s, partly as a way to deal with the gangs and partly as a product of the get tough immigration push towards the end of the presidency of Bill Clinton, the U.S. government began a program of deportation of foreign-born residents convicted of a wide range of crimes. This enhanced deportation policy vastly increased the number of gang members being sent home to El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and elsewhere. Like, half of these countries we fucked up with direct CIA intervention. Then their refugees come to America. We don't offer them any fucking pathway to like citizenship or economic help. Then they obviously go into a life of crime due to, one, deal with the other criminal entities that exist in their neighborhoods, and also because they have to resort to such means for survival. Then they take all of the information and all of the experience that they have of like, one, a lot of them are also former military members too. So remember that. They're like literally fucking dudes who either fought alongside whichever fascist entity was put into position of power or against. So they have like literal military vet experience. They come to America and then they get the criminal experience and access to a marketplace and also weaponry, an international network of criminals. Then they get fucking dumped back into El Salvador like Sydney Sweeney dumping her titties out on a fucking movie, on any movie really, without even giving knowledge to the motherfucking government. It is like a perfect shitstorm. It's a nice analogy. I think it's a phenomenal analogy. Salvadoran chatter, and one of the few that fucking hates Bukele. He's incredibly popular because one, Salvadorans are fucking reactionary as fuck. Two, Bukele has technically brought down crime, even though all he's doing is jailing people with tattoos. A lot of Salvis see tattoos as taboo due to religion. That felt like a microaggression against what? Ladies with big hoo-has? Like, what the fuck? I believe in a path to citizenship, but the U.S. really hasn't intervened in any of those countries in 30 plus years. Dog, they didn't come here last year. What the fuck are you talking about? We already gave you the historical reference point. They came here in the fucking 80s. I wonder what had happened in the decade, 2 decades prior. That's the whole point. They came here in the 80s as refugees, as veterans who are also refugees. They fucking, what am I doing? I'm just repeating exactly what I just explained literally 5 minutes ago. What the fuck is wrong with me? Okay. Also, our interventions in Honduras has not stopped, or Guatemala, nor El Salvador. El Salvador, the currency is the dollar, if I'm not mistaken. One other thing that Javier Milei should look forward to if he actually continues on his wonderful journey of dollarizing Argentina. No, it's not actually Bitcoin. The currency, the original currency was the dollar. They still trade on the dollar. They have Bitcoin, but nobody fucking uses Bitcoin. Don't be delusional. You physically cannot use fucking Bitcoin on simple purchases. That would be insane. Crypto maximalist, dude. Anyway, by the mid-90s, partially as a way to deal with the gangs, Bill Clinton shipped them off. According to one estimate, 20,000 criminals returned to Central America between 2000 and 2004. The trend continued over time. U.S. immigration authorities removed nearly 6,000 suspected gang members in 2018 alone. Around 1,300 of them are from MS-13. Central American governments, some of the poorest and most ineffective in the Western Hemisphere, were not capable of dealing with the criminal influx. I mean, this is like written by a fucking reactionary dude, it seems. The convicts, who often had only the scarcest connection in their countries of birth, had little chance of integrating into legitimate society, and they often turned to gang life. Ding, ding, ding. In this way, the decision to use immigration policy as an anti-gang tool helped spawn the virulent growth of the gang in Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. Oh, Central American government, some of the poorest. Nor were they properly forewarned by U.S. authorities, by the way, which is the most important part. Can you imagine being like a poor-ass Central American nation, like in the throes of dire economic circumstances and constant conflict, and they just, again, dump out 20,000 fucking hardened veterans that now also are a part of an international criminal network with a direct way into the American marketplace. They dumped them like Sydney Sweeney's juicy titties. They dumped them out. This ain't Euphoria. They did a Euphoria in El Salvador. Like, surprise. It's not tits. It's fucking 20,000 criminals. Okay. The convicts who often had only the scarcest connection. The MS-13 principal activities vary a great deal from one region to another. This is my streamer, bro. I'm getting banned. You haven't even seen Euphoria? I don't have to see Euphoria to know that Sydney Sweeney dumps out her boobs in it. This is why I can't recommend you to coworkers. Oh, I'm sorry. Do they not like jokes, or do they not like jokes specifically about Sydney Sweeney's boobs? I'm sorry, guys. I watched SNL as you did too, so I don't know why you're like, what do you mean? This should be on all of our minds. It's certainly on mine. The crimes, such as extorting bus companies, are arguably more disruptive on a daily basis to more people than any other criminal activity in the region. In the United States, MS-13 focuses on local drug sales and protecting urban turf to extort small businesses and underground bars. Anyway, they do like international human trafficking, stuff like that. They're also notoriously very violent, like more so than even other gangs. Like the decapitation and stuff like that. They're like they are like the cartels in that way. You call boobs hoo-haws, and I need you to know that means vaginas. Okay, never mind. My bad. Yeah. Kind of crazy that we did the exact thing export criminals Trump is accusing of foreign countries. Yes, that's why every case of conservative commentary is just projection. Every time someone has a reactionary approach, recognize that they're most likely projecting. Trump is literally, bring back Magumbos. True. Magumbos. Okay, that's not the point. I've deviated 8 times away from the original video that we were watching. We looked at statistics. We looked at Bukele. We looked at another YouTuber. Let's finish this, and then we'll get back to the criminal, the insane Guantanamo Bay style prison they have.
We lived a humble life, but we lived well. We had everything. And in 1 second, they destroyed everything. It's awful.
The authorities here have extraordinary powers under the state of emergency declared in March last year.
In different places, we catch them.
We're on patrol with the army in what used to be a no-go zone for them.
Hasan Ist followed you. Thank you for Ist following me.
As we climb further into this former gangland, suddenly the loud rap music draws their attention.
Oh.
Play the wrong songs here,
oh.
And this happens. The teenager seems to know the drill. They check him for tattoos.
This seems like a good way to deal with this.
Even on his scalp.
This used to be one of the most dangerous areas in El Salvador, but now, as you can see, the army are very keen to show us they're in control.
Normality is returning here, but it's been imposed down the barrel of a gun. At night, the police patrols are even more risky. We're following a so-called rapid intervention raid on one of the poorest neighborhoods. Dark alleys and nervous residents as the police move through. Here, officers arrest an alleged gang collaborator. They won't tell us what evidence they have against this shopkeeper, but they admit he'll be sent to prison and will wait months for a trial.
Yeah. Y'all think this shit's good, dude? Again, the original video started with women and children are being locked up in increasingly higher rates without any evidence whatsoever. And then they also snuck in that 70% of those incarcerated have no evidence against them as being an active participant in MS-13 or any of the gangs. So basically, in many ways, it seems like violence has only changed hands. It went from anarcho-capitalist-ass criminal elements to the single unitary monopoly on violence holding state. with very little paperwork associated with the actual conduct too. They're not like, yeah, minus 40% crime rate, but plus 40% crime rate of police.
Being young and male here.
Because here's the other problem. Remember, if the modus operandi before this government is working with gangs because either A, you have no other fucking outlet, like you have no other way of making money, or B, because you've been extorted or threatened into working with the gangs, you're fucked. Like there is no way of like approaching the situation. You're basically just doing a dragnet. One of the chatters pointed out that if you live in those areas, you are probably 100% indirectly related to one of those gangs. Yes.
Is a risky business.
The findings of our investigation show only 30% of those that have been detained under the state of emergency
I
laws
support
have
getting
any
criminals and their associates off the streets. Yes, bro, because you live in America, dumbass, and you're probably a white guy living in Connecticut. So you have no, like, this would be akin, and I'm probably only going to reinforce your bigotry here. This would be like if the American government went into like every black neighborhood and arrested every black person. Okay, which I suspect you would also be in support of. Like, gangs are not the answer, bitch. What happens when you don't have anything? Also, the government is acting like a gang now. You know what I mean?
kind of link with the gangs.
Soyapango used to be a battlefield where 3 gangs fought for supremacy. Now its streets hum with life again. But everywhere there are dark memories. The corner of the football pitch was where gang members executed anyone.
My mom is screaming she loves Bukele Lamau. I'm lost. She doesn't know anything. I mean, dude, I get, by the way, this isn't like America at all. This is one instance where I do kind of understand why there's so much reactionary sentiment towards any kind of criminality. If you're El Salvadoran expat, if you're literally living here and you're descendants of refugees who are Salvadoran themselves, or if you are directly still connected to El Salvador and have been victimized by constant, unrelenting gang violence, then yeah, you're going to have a very reactionary approach to that sort of thing until the government decides you are also connected criminally to the gangs. In which case, it seems like you would probably want some fucking paper trail, right? You would want like a little bit of legal grounds to be able to be unlawfully detained, it seems. In which case, you're not going to be so happy when that happens. You know what I mean? Because it's not like these gangs start off by being like, we're going to be violent and kill everyone in the neighborhood. This is how it first starts. They start off by being like, oh yeah, you're in dire economic circumstances. We're going to help you out. And then it evolves into what it became. And that is kind of what the El Salvadoran government is doing in an almost identical fashion. The only difference is they are sanctioned by the international community, it seems.
One who resisted them.
The kid was from a rival area controlled by the Mau Mau gang.
Ellen Nielsen remembers the bad days. During a match, he saw gang members killing a 16-year-old player in front of hundreds of spectators.
The man shot him. Then he took out the magazine, put another bullet in, then shot him again. He shot him about 20 times.
They tried to create a parallel state.
El Salvador's security minister likens the gangs to terrorists, insisting the crackdown was necessary to rebuild society.
And of course, you can see the people on our street with hope.
But what about the claims that innocent people have been arrested as well?
Tell me which police of whatever country that you choose is only capture guilty people.
Okay, once again, this is one of those moments where I think it's better to lie just to keep up the appearance and not to be like, yeah, of course we're, you know, throwing innocent people in jail. Everybody does that. That's insane. That's kind of insane. That's not a good argument, dude. What the fuck? No, that's a bad argument. He gave up. He conceded and went, no, you. He's not a prison abolitionist, chatter. He is the guy. He is the fucking jailer. Holy fuck, dude. It is so insane. Like, he's not wrong. Yes, a lot of innocent people get thrown in prison because the criminal justice system is objectively broken. This is another one of those moments where, like, this is why Trump pops off so hard, because he just says it like it is, which means, like, he's an asshole and he's telling you this shit is fucked up and he's going to continue doing it. But at least it's, like, refreshing that he is honest in his dishonesty.
The government's not just locking up living gang members, but also expunging all trace of those who've died. By destroying their graves, they are dismantling their legacy. The crackdown has brought peace, but at what cost? Dan Rivers, ITV News, El Salvador.
Bro, that's fucking nuts. Now, what needs to happen in this circumstance is also obviously an effort to rebuild society in the image that you think is prosperous. And I suspect given his crypto shit, I don't think he's doing that. Which again, point to no long-term sustainability. There is no long-term sustainability here. If you're just going punish, 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 in the short term, you're like, okay, well, the crime rate is dropping. Sure, if you do dragnets and you fucking lock up anyone that you claim is even like remotely affiliated with a gang, looked in the direction of a gang and didn't immediately go, oh, I'm scared or whatever the fuck, then yeah, you're going to see a drop in the crime rate because guess what? The criminal entity now is no longer any of the gangs, but the government itself.
Even if you don't know much about El Salvador, you've probably seen this face.
Soy Nayib Bukele.
He's the president of this country and he's very popular. Nayib Bukele often brags on social media about what he's been able to accomplish, turning one of the most dangerous countries in Latin America into a place where you can now walk freely on the streets. He touts El Salvador as a beautiful tourism destination and as a country that's finally prospering. All because he was able to beat the gangs that used to control this country. But more than 4 years into his presidency, more and more people are starting to ask, is that the full story? Are the more than 70,000 people who have been arrested really dangerous gang members? And do those beautiful images on social media show what life is really like for most people in El Salvador?
Yeah, I like the notion that so many people that don't know what like Central America, Latin America look like throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s are like, wow, this seems like a really successful strategy. It's like, no, dude, he's doing the same thing. Like, he's doing the same thing that has been done and was a demonstrable failure time and time again. This isn't new at all, dude. This is the thing. It's just that back in the day, we used to implement it with like our military training. Now it's become so streamlined that people do it to themselves, I guess. I don't know how fucking connected this dude is.
Aquí estaba lleno de muchachos, de las pandillas y todo eso. Nadie podía entrar de otros lugares, así como ustedes que han venido, ¿verdad? Era bien difícil.
This is Distrito Italia. It was one of the strongholds of the Mara Salvatrucha 13 gang. Alba Lorena Soto Rodriguez says she always kept her doors and windows closed.
Yo les tengo miedo.
Even before moving here, she says gang members had threatened her.
No me querían matar, me dijeron, pero te doy 72 horas para que te vayas. Si te veo de pasar esas 72 horas, ya no vas a vivir para contar. Oh, chica.
¿Qué sentiste en ese momento?
que el mundo se me ha dicho. Porque dejé a mis 2 niños, no tenía para dónde irme. Ellos me amenazaron con armas.
At the time, she left the country, but after a few years, she came back to reunite with her family. Once in Distrito Italia, she says gang members set their eyes on one of her daughters.
Que le decían de que estaba bien bonita y yo les tenía miedo porque los veía todos tatuados. Y yo les digo, cuarto, usted es menor, le decía. Como yo veía las noticias que perdían las hipotas o que parecían muertos por otro lado. Entonces eso me daba miedo a mí.
She had reason to worry. Gangs routinely committed brutal violence against women.
Este lugar fue un lugar plagado de maras, de pandilleros.
Carlos lives in another municipality that was controlled by MS-13. He asked us to conceal his identity because he still fears for his safety. Carlos and his family are farmers. He says gang members used to extort them.
De lo poco que nos pagaban nosotros, entre nosotros como familia, como trabajando en las propiedades, reuníamos los $300 que nos pedían y lo aportábamos a los pandilleros. Un año que con los trabajos de nosotros nos fue mal, nos atrasamos. Ahí se venían a poner a vigiarnos a nosotros, porque no habíamos aportado esa cantidad de dinero, entonces que nos querían matar.
Through extortion, the gangs made millions of dollars every year. They forced business owners and workers to pay up or risk getting killed.
Me tuvieron hincado una vez. Me habían puesto un M6 en la cabeza, amenazándome que me fuera.
In 2015, El Salvador had one of the highest murder rates in the world.
To understand how gang violence got so bad in El Salvador, we have to talk about U.S. intervention here. Because U.S. policy...
Damn. Classic, dude. Classic America bad. What will she say now? God, Hasan, you and all the fucking tankies that you show constantly talking about America bad. Oh, America did this. It's like, God. I will now provide zero evidence as to why America good, and I will also not listen to why America is directly involved in what is going on in El Salvador, and then continue to just simply say, you're a tanky, you're a campist, you say America bad for everything.
That spanned several decades and several presidents helped create the gangs that terrorized the Salvadorian people. First, we need to understand what was happening in the 60s and 70s. El Salvador was ruled by a handful of rich landowners, and that ruling class was exploiting workers, paying them starvation wages, keeping them in poverty. And people got tired of living like that, so they organized to demand better conditions. El Salvador's government responded with violence. Death squads were killing labor organizers, teachers, religious leaders, anyone who dared challenge the interests of the wealthy. And that's when the U.S. comes in, because the U.S. government was directly sending aid and supporting the government that was oppressing its own people.
Wait, what? Dude, what? No, say it ain't so. I thought this was rule-based international order. Excuse me? No. What? But we're the good guys in the story, and now you're making me feel like we're the bad guys in the story, and I don't like that. What do you mean to tell me that the United States aided and abetted a fascist dictatorship comprised of landowning wealthy people that violently toppled a potential socialist revolution? Not even a socialist one. It's just like a normal, not even, I wouldn't even say socialist revolution, but just like any kind of left-adjacent progressive revolution.
Why? Well, these were the Cold War years, and the U.S. did not want a communist takeover in its backyard. To prevent that, they would go on to support right-wing forces in this country, no matter what atrocities they committed. One of the most glaring examples of how U.S. intervention directly led to Salvadorian deaths was the massacre in El Mozote. Soldiers that had been armed and trained by the U.S. killed almost 1,000.
Okay. To be fair, guys, I'm sure we properly punished the guys that ran cover for the El Mozote massacre or trained the militias that engaged in the El Mozote massacre, and definitely didn't continue elevating them to higher positions in society, despite the fact that it was obvious that they deliberately covered that up after training the militias that engaged in such atrocious war crimes against children, by the way. Like, one of the things I will never forget about learning about the El Mozote massacre for the first time was the fact that militias would go into fucking neighborhoods where the able-bodied men were out working or, you know, fighting, and they would literally take children, like little babies, away from their parents and chuck them into the air and stab them with bayonets. Yeah. No, I'm not going to tell you that the guy who did that, it was elevated to be the national security advisor. No shot. That would be crazy. I mean, no. We would never do that. No. Who's this Elliot Abrams guy you guys are talking about? I don't really know who this guy is. Wait. What? But I mean, surely he's not in. I mean, that was like maybe Trump would do that, right? Like maybe Trump would give Elliot Abrams a role in his cabinet, right? Like certainly it would just be Trump that did that, right? Holy fuck, look at this dude's. Yeah, that's only the Trump administration would do such a thing. See, in 2021, Abrams founded a new group called the Vandenberg Coalition, named after Arthur Vandenberg, who helped build the foundations of NATO after World War II. The coalition involved Morgan Ortagus, a former State Department official, Randy Schooneman, a neocon lobbyist, and a former head of the Committee for the Liberation of Iraq, Doug Feith, a former Defense Department planner for the Iraq War, and Scooter Libby. Wait. I'm sorry, what does this say? Wait, hold on. Let me zoom in on this real quick. I couldn't. Did that say? Am I seeing this correctly? It says that the guy who ran cover for the El Mozote massacre was appointed by President Joe Biden to the Nonpartisan U.S. Advisory Commission on Public Diplomacy? I can't. What? What do you, what? If I didn't know any better, I'd say you already knew this stuff and you're acting. No, not at all. I would never say America bad for very valid fucking reasons. I would never say things like that. I'm just simply stumbling across why America's bad on a Wikipedia page, which is certainly not a tactic so that I can get the Hasan only says America bad debate perverts to like finally come on board. Now that I can portray myself as someone who wasn't previously knowledgeable on the issues and actually just stumbled across it right now in the most favorite style that they're used to. I certainly didn't do that. That'd be crazy because that would require previously knowing about these things by reading extensively on the subject matter. And I would never do that because that's gay. What's actually super cool is saying America good and then opening up a Wikipedia page and then maybe finally coming to the conclusion that maybe it's not so good. Maybe it's kind of bad. Yes, reading is both gay and Marxist, which is bad and doubly gay. Unless you're reading a Wikipedia page and then you arrive at that conclusion. So, wow. Huh. Did you really just use gay as a pejorative? I used double gay as a double pejorative. What about opening a Wikipedia page and still thinking it's good? Yeah, I don't know what to do at that point. It's like you're unsalvageable. Anyway, that's weird. That's weird that happened with Elliot Abrams, who you know, defended the death squads that threw babies in the air and used a bayonet to kill them. Let's continue.
1,000 innocent Salvadorians, half of them children. And that's the kind of violence that the people from El Salvador were fleeing when they migrated to the U.S. In LA, young Salvadorians were met with the violence of gangs that didn't accept them, so they created their own, La Mara Salvatrucha Stoners, which eventually became MS-13. In the 90s, when the gang violence and crime in LA became too much, the U.S. deported convicted criminals back to their countries. Thousands of gang members were sent back to El Salvador, a country that had just been torn apart by civil war. In that environment, the gangs flourished and subjected the Salvadorian people to yet more decades of violence.
But in 2019,
Thank you, 34MKD50, for the 50 gifted subs. Remember, she didn't even mention the most important part. Dumping the gang members into El Salvador without telling the El Salvadoran government that they were gang members. As in, like here you go. You're free to do whatever the fuck you want to do in El Salvador. Go ahead. Have fun with that. That is what we did. Doesn't seem like it's something a good guy would do. I don't know. I'm just fucking, you know? It just doesn't seem like it'd be a good thing to do to a country that is already in the throes of civil war. Yeah. Anyway.
Nayib Bukele brought change. During his first year in office, homicides went down by almost 50%. And then in 2022, there was a setback. In March, the gangs killed 87 people in one weekend. And Bukele and his legislative assembly responded with an iron fist. They declared a state of exception. It gave police the power to detain anyone without a warrant, without having to tell them why, and people lost their right to an attorney.
It's always a good way to address any problem by just throwing everyone in a super prison that you built.
Para el centro íbamos, ya habíamos agarrado a bastantes muchachos. Y a pesar de lo que a mí ya me habían hecho, ¿verdad? Me da lástima porque no les esperaba nada bueno.
Vamos a ir y vamos a atrapar a los delincuentes a donde quiera que estén, a donde quiera que se escondan.
In the first 2 months of the state of exception, police arrested more than 35,000 people. A year in, Bukele had managed to dismantle the gangs. Salvadorians could now go into neighborhoods where they had.
In a 1998 interview, Abrams remarked, while it was important for us to promote the cause of human rights in Central America, it was more important to prevent a communist takeover in El Salvador. Yeah. Can't have that, dude. He said a Cuban-style revolution. By the way, the correct, I think the term he uses. Let me see if I can find the quote.
Dared step foot in years. Vendors could sell without getting extorted. And Alba now feels at peace in her community.
Nadie había hecho esto de poner mano dura sobre las pandillas. Nadie. De lo que yo tengo uso de razón, que se han sentado y se han ido y se han sentado gobierno. Nadie.
In May, Bukele celebrated on Twitter that El Salvador had gone 365 days without homicides, a full year.
Tenemos más libertad, más seguridad.
Por primera vez empezamos a vivir y sentir la verdadera paz.
Bukele has been making sure the world knows what he has done. A former publicist, the president shares highly produced videos of tattooed men getting rounded up. The videos have been seen around the world, and they've gotten Bukele a lot of praise.
Like, for the record, I'm not even why are you so against getting rid of crime? I don't think all crime is the fault of U.S. imperialism. Dude, come on. No, we're not doing this. I'm not going to relitigate how we are involved in this, okay? The real crime is you thinking that you can bait me into the top of the hour ad break by saying some dumb bitch shit like that, okay? Yeah, I know it's the top of the hour, and here's a crime. Watching the stream without subscribing at the top of the hour and avoiding those ads by using illegal means. Don't do it. Just kidding. We're pro-crime on this broadcast, as always. But if you are a law-abiding citizen who doesn't have any tattoos, then subscribe for $5 or for free with the Twitch Prime to avoid the top of the hour ad breaks. Here's a 3-minute ad break now.
Él está poniendo unas cosas tan bonitas. Él habla maravillas.
But the videos the president shares don't show people like Esmeralda Domínguez.
En ese documento dice que yo soy miembro activo de la Mara Salvatrucha.
I prefer a handful of citizens getting incarcerated for the safety of the whole country, to be frank. He really doesn't seem like a bad president. Bro, how about 70%? But first of all, this implies that, like, I'm not in favor of arresting and locking, like, murderers up. Okay? I very much am. I am not, like, anti the existence of any form of stopping people from... Jesus, I take it back. Yes. Okay. So that's good. At least we established that. Okay? It's just that I believe that when you arrest and apprehend these people, there should be a mechanism set in place not to, like, permanently detain them, but instead to try and claw back a gigantic percentage of those guys from the throes of violent crime into productive members of society. And that only happens through rehabilitation. It does not happen with mass incarceration. That's number one. Number two, in order to do that, in the way that Bukele has done, he's just dropped all of the fucking due process. No habeas corpus whatsoever. They are designated as terrorists, and a shit ton of people get caught in the fray. This is a major problem. A ginormous problem. There's one short-term problem caused by that. Obviously, you're just, like, further radicalizing people who weren't actually criminal elements at all. They were not working with the gangs. They were maybe tangentially related as a consequence of, like, proximity, right? Or maybe they were threatened into working with the gangs, because you're talking about, like, those corner street corner, like, vendors and stuff that are now being arrested for being a part of the gang when they're not actually a part of the gang. They're just being extorted by the gang. So that's a huge issue, because now those guys are treated as criminals, most likely will be radicalized. They have nothing else. So that's bad in the short term as well. But in the long term, it is devastating, because you cannot maintain a permanent prison state like this. Look at the United States of America. They forfeited their human rights when they did those atrocities. These people are too far gone. No need to rehabilitate. Got it, dude. Thank you, silent civilian. Yeah, that seems great. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Luckily, your dumbass is not making these decisions. And, well, technically, dumbasses like you are making these decisions in El Salvador. But that's not how this works. Your goal is to make society prosperous. Okay? Your goal is to make society fucking prosperous. It is not, and to ensure that you have a prosperous society, of course, there is going to be enforcement of criminality, making sure that criminals are apprehended, making sure that they are detained, making sure that they are no longer doing crimes. The notion that this will be good in the long term is insane. It's idiotic. It's not going to work. He saved my fucking country, you asshole, poophead. He's not going around arresting anyone with a tattoo. These people have gang tattoos. I don't think you understand the kind of savages MS-13 are. I do understand it, as a matter of fact. I covered it. Covered it extensively. This is in the USA, bro. We don't want those guys out being fucking librarians. It's absolutely awful for those who did get locked up and are not criminals. Thank you, crucially, too. If jailed people have no rights, all the government has to do is prosecute someone for a crime, any crime. Oh, you're a leftist? Guess what? You're also a drug dealer now. There you go. The fact that 70% of those who are currently in detention do not have any valid gang relations is insane. He's like, some people go to jail. Who fucking cares? It's like, yeah, that's why I'm not talking about like the actual dudes who like decapitate and rape children. Okay, dumb fuck. I'm talking about the guy who's extorted as a shopkeeper who now is in jail with the guys who decapitate people. That's my point. That's a really fucked process. I'm simply saying there should be due process. Hello? What the fuck is wrong with some of you dumb fucks? Yeah, I also did show that the guy who at least facilitated the decapitation of children that we know of is currently in the Biden cabinet. His name is Elliot Abrams. But that's besides the point. That's neither here nor there.
She was arrested when one of her daughters was only 4 months old. By the time she was released, her baby was 1. And Esmeralda was given a document accusing her of being a gang member.
¿Y por qué si soy miembro activo estoy afuera? Si se supone que él dice en su gran publicidad que todos los que son, él los tiene hasta en un penal que es para ellos y que él no va a dejar salir a ninguno.
Esmeralda says the conditions in prison were inhumane.
Ahí hay piojos, ahí hay enfermedades, no hay higiene, no hay agua, 8 días sin bañarnos. Si habían enfermedades, que alguien estaba enfermo, nunca habían atenciones médicas, a menos que ella estuviera prácticamente muriendo. O muerta, porque hubieron varias que ya las sacaban y ya no regresaron, murieron.
She says what's missing from Bukele's propaganda is how the state of exception has deepened poverty in communities like hers.
Por ejemplo, yo no puedo tener un trabajo formal porque me están pidiendo antecedentes penales.
Esmeralda is a farmer, and in the 8 months she was in prison, her crops got ruined. And her partner, whose income she counted on, was also arrested and is still detained.
¿Cómo va a hacer para sobrevivir? Dígame usted.
Sometimes Esmeralda has to skip buying her daughter's medicine because she doesn't have the money.
Le digo así, soy sincera, a veces no sé ni de dónde.
While Esmeralda was detained, it was her mother who took care of her daughters.
You mentioned this already. This occurred all over Latin America. The military dictatorship in Brazil follows a similar pattern, targeting leftist journalists and artists, anyone they deemed as adversaries. Yeah. People are eating the propaganda going, oh, well, they're arresting criminals in a country where their crime is a massive problem, right? So then they don't recognize that their own civil liberties, they are advocating for their own civil liberties and the civil liberties of their family members that are still in El Salvador getting removed. That's the craziest part about this. Oh, but again, I do understand if you are Salvadoran, and I understand why your parents will be more reactionary on this stuff, because it's like, it is definitely not the normal amount of crime that you're used to in a country like the United States of America. Like, it's very different than that.
Esmeralda's mom is a survivor of the violence of the 80s, when the government was killing farmers who were fighting for their rights. Once again, she says her family has become a victim of the state.
Simplemente vivir aquí en lugares pobres, seguimos siendo víctimas.
El Estado sabe, pues, quién, a dónde, pero lo más fácil es agarrar al inocente.
Yes, he is. I'm Salvadoran, dog. My aunt almost went to jail last year. Her crime, she treated gang members to her job. Is a fucking nurse. Chatters fighting. You are either painfully white or just reactionary dumbasses. Yep. Chat is about to be like, well, she didn't go to jail. System works. Hasan, it's because of my hubby that I found you, and thank God I did, because I'm also Salvi, and I don't care too much for Bukele. Thanks for sharing the truth. Like, I think a lot of people are mistaking my coverage of this as like, no, MS-13 should like run rampant, and Salvadoran gangs should run the country. That's not what I'm saying at all. Okay? I'm simply stating that this is not a good solution to the problem, and it's only going to make the conditions worse. It seems like in the short term you're seeing benefits, right? You're like, oh well, you know, there's some issues, sure, fine. But what you're failing to recognize is that this has been tried, tested, and failed time and time again. This method is not a good method.
Eso es lo más fácil porque él sabe que nosotros no andamos huyendo.
It's also especially interesting that we're having this conversation in the eve of what happened in Haiti, where like they literally just broke into the fucking prisons and released a shit ton of the prisoners in Haiti. A subject I don't usually broach that much because there's no way to cover it adequately. I don't know enough.
Right before the state of exception, Bukele said there were 70,000 gang members in the streets of El Salvador. Since then, almost 74,000 people have been detained. But a report from the National Police of El Salvador leaked in September showed that almost 43,000 suspected gang members were still free. So if there are that many gang members still free, the question becomes, who has the state been arresting?
Those numbers don't add up, dog. What the fuck? Stop being lazy. You are one Wikipedia away from being an expert on Haiti. Yeah. Damn, the math ain't mathin', but what do I fucking know, you know?
They'd been arresting.
This is the Public Defender's Office of El Salvador. People come here every day trying to get news of their relatives that have been detained and that they haven't heard from in months. It's common to see a long line like this every single morning.
Metieron el mismo policía y me dijo que no le llegó nada. Y prácticamente me lo llevaron por hacer números. Le faltaban 2 al policía.
The same month that her son was arrested, a police union in El Salvador said officers were being pressured to meet daily arrest quotas.
No tienen nada, le decía al otro. Le decía un policía al otro, ¿verdad? Tiene y le dijo el otro, pero ni modo, nos faltan 2. Echarlos, le dijo, por hacer números. Por eso está mi hijo ahí.
El Salvador now has the highest incarceration rate in the world, and its president is the most popular leader in Latin America. That popularity has allowed him to amass a lot of power. Bukele now controls all 3 branches of government in El Salvador. That's how he's able to run for re-election, even though the Constitution forbids it. A president is not supposed to serve more than 1 consecutive term in El Salvador, but the legislature from Bukele's party replaced the judges on the Supreme Court. And then that court ruled that he could seek re-election. In response to criticism that he's dismantling democracy, Bukele calls himself the coolest dictator. Bukele has changed the laws.
I think that's the worst part about it, is that he's so fucking Reddit, dude. And Javier Milei too. God. South America, Central America is shaping up to be just a war of like, you know, subtle social democratic candidates versus like the most Redditor anarcho-capitalist motherfuckers you've ever seen.
To make himself more powerful, while Salvadorians lose the rights that used to protect them from the state. Remember Carlos, the young man who used to get extorted by the gangs? He says he went from being a victim of gang members to getting accused of being one of them. Carlos, his father and grandfather were on their way to work when they got arrested.
Yo iba adelante y alcancé a ver un soldado que iban cubriéndose en la vuelta. Ellos sin mediar palabras, sin preguntar nombres ni nada, le dijo a mi familia que iban a quedar detenidos porque habían una orden de arresto porque los acusaban de que eran pandilleros.
Carlos says they weren't going to arrest them at first, but he questioned the officer.
Solo me dijo, mira, vos andate. Vine yo y me le acerqué al señor agente, le dije yo que yo quería saber cuál era la razón de la detención. Me dijo que por pendejo y metido me iban a llevar, y como él vio que yo me fijé que en el papel no tenía nada, pues algo creíble, pues.
Entonces, él dice, tengo una orden para arrestar a estas personas. Sí. Tú dices, déjame ver, y en la lista no hay nombres.
No hay nombres.
Salvadorian newspaper El Faro examined the court documents of 690 people detained during the state of exception. They found that police sometimes reported they arrested people for reasons like they looked nervous or suspicious, that someone had anonymously accused them.
Bro, I swear to God, like, there's cops looking at this and just busting nuts. And the fucking cop chatters in here also defending this shit. Jesus fucking Christ. Conservatives love talking about 1984, brother. And it's like, when it's staring at them, they're like, but it's good actually because it's the brown folk that are going to jail. I like it. Straight fascism, brother. Holy moly.
Or they had tattoos. But in the reports, they didn't specify if the tattoos were gang-related. None of the 690 people named in the documents were accused of murder. Carlos says most men he was detained with were not gang members.
El 4 de junio que me llevaron a la audiencia, había unos 544 en esa audiencia. Y de los 544 solo habían 32 que dijo la jueza que sí estaban.
Sorry. DC crime bill gives police so much unchecked power. The people behind it want us to believe that police won't abuse the power they're giving them, but there's nothing in the law to stop them. The vote is tomorrow. If you're in DC, show up to the John Wilson building. What is it? I don't know what the...
DC Mayor Muriel Bowser is trying to pass the DC crime bill, a law that would give unfettered power to DC police. And the vote on that law is happening tomorrow. So it's important to me that you understand the difference between how the legislators responsible for this draconian-ass law say that the law will be implemented versus what the law actually says and gives the police the power to do based on how broadly the law is deliberately written. Some of the power the DC crime bill would give to the police includes, but is not limited to, 1, the police would be able to designate any area a high-risk area. And once done, they can stop, search, and arrest anyone walking in a group with so much as one other person. Supporters of this provision of the law say that the police will not apply it discriminatorily, but there is nothing in the language of the law.
Oh, dude, it's fine, guys. The fucking Nazis said that they won't use it willy-nilly.
To stop them. And what neighborhoods have you known the police to designate high crime areas?
Come on now.
2, the police would have the power to arrest anyone for any kind of face covering at the sole discretion of the police. Supporters of this provision say that the police will not use this to discriminate against people or people wearing religious coverings like hijabs, but there is absolutely nothing in the language of the law to stop that. There are no carve-outs made for people in religious coverings or medical masks, and they have the ability to make that exception. So why haven't they? 3, the police would have the power to demand anybody riding the metro provide them with their name and address or face arrest. Supporters of this provision say that the police will not use it discriminatorily and just when they believe a suspect intends to commit misconduct. But there is no legal standard written into the law. They're not required to have probable cause or reasonable suspicion. Nowhere in the language of the provision are the police even required to identify themselves as officers if they're in plain clothes or provide a reason for why they're asking for the person's name and address. 4, the police would now have the right to kill suspects in car chases. The problems with this provision are obvious. 5, the police would now have the ability to review all their body cam footage before they write their statements. And 6, it would become a crime to discard a gun. So the minute that the gun touches the ground, you could be charged with a separate crime. I say separate crime because illegal gun possession is already a crime. So if somebody illegally possessed the gun, they could and they would be being prosecuted for that already. What this provision does is add a criminal charge if when being confronted by the police, you decide to discard or drop a gun. This is one of the worst provisions in this law because it doesn't take too much imagining to...
The shiesty laws are so insane. Like, and it's happening all around the country. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess you just can't fucking cover your face when it's cold out. Like, what the fuck?
Realize how deadly the consequences could be in a country where police have routinely killed Black people under the stated justification that they believed they were armed, whether legally or not. Imagine being disincentivized to put down your gun by this law that makes it a crime, when keeping the gun on you is all the police need to justify giving you a death sentence. They need only say that they believed you were armed and dangerous. And I want to remind y'all, this is only a handful of the provisions of this horrific law. The law is so much worse than this. It does and gives the police so much more power than this. Listen, I understand the desire to stop crime, but this law does not do it. It just
Yeah. It's great. All right, let's get back to not the United States, but a country that we've still contributed greatly to in a negative way, El Salvador.
De junio que nos llevaron a la audiencia, habíamos 544.
Yeah, this is the craziest part. They just like put you in front of a judge with like fucking 200 people.
En esa audiencia.
544 people in one
solo
hearing.
habían 32 que dijo la jueza que sí estaban
And only 32 members were fucking actually tied to the
realmente
gangs.
vinculados a pandillas y que sí andaban tatuados. Los habían hallado
512
con armas.
non-gang members. They were found only 32.
Drogas. Imagínense que de tanta gente, pero ni la mitad siquiera, pues para tapar algo que dicen que solo pandilleros agarrados. Para nosotros sentimos que esto del régimen iba a ser un suspiro para nosotros porque pues íbamos a poder trabajar libremente y ese dinero nos podía quedar a nosotros. Pero no, aquí de las personas que uno conoce que andan a situación, ahí andan pues. Entonces, ¿cómo va a estar seguro si ahí están infiltrados? El rato que ellos quieran armarse, vuelven a hacer lo mismo que eran antes pues.
En muy poco tiempo, El Salvador pasó de ser la capital mundial de los homicidios, pasó de literalmente ser el país más peligroso del mundo, a ser el país más seguro de América Latina.
When you take a closer look at the president's messaging, the cracks start to show. Like the announcement of a full year without homicides. Bukele's tweet now has a community note fact-checking the claim. A few weeks after the tweet, local media reported that the government's own internal documents showed homicides were 61% higher than the Bukele administration was telling the public.
A ver cuánto tiempo duran sus homeboys allá adentro. Ustedes desatan una ola de criminalidad y nosotros quitamos la comida en las cárceles.
Bukele has said he will not spend public money to make gang members feel more comfortable in prison. But Carlos says the gang members he was detained with got special treatment.
Los espaguetis, una de las dos cosas, o lleva cucarachas o te lleva excremento de rata. Asqueroso, pero es lo único que hay. Pues. Y fíjese que a los pandilleros, a los que están condenados.
They don't report it unless the body is found, so they underreport crime. Well, one could state that maybe they're just trying to incentivize criminals to be better at crime. Have you thought about that? It's kind of like the principle behind like every time you kill a spider, you're technically making spiders better. You know what I mean? Because like if a spider got, well, next time spiders need to be smarter. You know what I mean? You've made the collective of spiders smarter by taking out one of the dumb ones. It's kind of like that.
Tienen un menú variado. Porque a ellos les llega carne, les llega medallones, les llega chorizo, les llega salchicha.
O sea, que tú veías que trataban a los pandilleros mejor.
Sí, por ejemplo, ellos andaban más cómodamente. No puedo decir, me han contado, yo lo he visto.
Gang members getting preferential treatment in prison is not new in El Salvador. The administrations before Bukele negotiated with the gangs. They offered them.
I mean, dude, before people say, this is something that people keep asking. By the way, the reason why we watch this 19-minute video is because it leads into this much more popular video right now that's blowing up, talking about the insane prison system. And I didn't want to go into it ill-equipped, especially with an audience that was like unfamiliar with the situation on the ground. But before you ask like, oh, what's a better solution? I have a better solution. It's not to like not apprehend criminals, okay? It's to continue having due process. It's like, that's it. Not having dragnets and fucking arresting people willy-nilly. This video, the video, Lucito video is biased in favor of the prison also. Yeah, exactly.
Them benefits in prison in exchange for keeping the number of homicides low on the streets. El Faro revealed that Bukele did it too. After El Faro's reporting, the Attorney General's Office of El Salvador started an investigation, and prosecutors obtained security camera footage that shows a Bukele official entering a maximum security prison. He was accompanied by masked men, some of whom prosecutors say were at-large gang members who were going to receive instructions from gang leaders in prison. Bukele denied the accusations, and then the legislature, which is controlled by Bukele's party, removed the attorney general who was investigating the government's negotiations with the gangs. But there's another investigation that's still ongoing, and that's the one by the United States government. The U.S. has also accused Bukele's administration of cutting a deal with the gangs. The Department of Justice says El Salvador's government protected MS-13 gang leaders from being extradited to the U.S. to be prosecuted. One of those leaders was Elmer Canales, known as...
Okay, to be fair, America, what are you doing? First you deported them, now you want them back? Like, make up your fucking mind. You know what I mean? Which is it? You want them back? Or do you want to fucking dump them out? I'm sorry. Hello? It's like, you can't fucking send him back to El Salvador and be like, actually, never mind, we fucked up. We want him back. Can you please send him over? It's like...
Crook. Crook was in prison in El Salvador when the U.S. asked that he be sent to New York to face charges for terrorism. But instead, he was suddenly released, even though he still had 40 years left to serve in prison. While El Faro obtained an audio recording where a senior Bukele official admitted he helped Crook escape prison.
They wanted him back so they could send him again to El Salvador without telling the government. They were like, come on, send him back, come on. No takebacks. You said no takebacks? Okay, well, we lied about that. Come on, give it to him.
In 2021.
Y yo al viejo lo saqué de adentro, brother, en una forma de ayudarles a todos y de demostrarles mi lealtad y confianza. Pues yo mismo lo fui a traer allá y yo mismo lo fui a Guatemala.
Last November, U.S. officials found Crook in Mexico.
Es un show, pues, como le digo, uno que ha estado allá ve la pura mentira que cómo hacen.
Carlos says while he was in prison, he witnessed a visit from Osiris Luna, the Bukele official seen in this image.
En el Salco, un día llegaron a sacar todos los pandilleros. Y llegaron un grupo de personas con cámaras y todo, y ahí estaba el señor Osiris Luna. Y cuando ellos iban, o sea, fue como video lo que hicieron. Cuando ellos regresaron a la celda, llevaban paquetes de galletas que les habían dado por bajar a hacer el video.
Carlos says, ironically, the people who are not associated with the gangs are the ones suffering the most in El Salvador's prisons. He says guards brutally beat them.
A mi abuelo, en el penal también, allá le pegaron más fuerte que a nosotros porque decían, a él le chorreaba la espalda de agorrotarse. Entonces, de los muchachos que iba con nosotros, a uno le quebraron unas costillas. El muchacho llegó de arrastres a la celda. Y él pegaba gritos porque es un dolor insoportable. Por las noches él le agarraba fiebre, empezaba a delirar. Como a las 2 semanas de estar ahí, murió el muchacho en la misma celda donde yo estaba.
A human rights group from El Salvador found that more than 200 people have died while in custody since the beginning of the state of exception. They estimate that almost half of them were murdered. Carlos worries for his father and grandfather who are still detained a year and a half later.
El gobierno está usando las instituciones para matar a la gente. ¿Y los pandilleros que han matado? A la gente humilde. Y lo mismo está haciendo el gobierno. Están matando a la gente pobre, la gente que no tiene cómo defenderse. Pues.
The lives of the people we interviewed look very different from the images of El Salvador that reach most of us. And it's almost like they're two countries, one for tourists, Bitcoin influencers, and beauty queens that looks like peace and prosperity. And another one for the Salvadorians who live in the most impoverished communities, where safety feels fragile and human rights don't apply.
Nice. This was phenomenal. This person is incredible. Bianca Gerlau, I believe she's Puerto Rican, right? Someone was saying in the chat. Go over there and give it a like. Oof. Okay, now let's get back to this fucking. Let's get back to this video glazing up CCOT and the insane prison that they have.
Armory. You have guns, of course, to control in the event of a riot or similar situation. To date, there has not been one. And look, these are the hand and foot cuffs that are placed on prisoners who have to leave their cells, whether for food, exercise, medical care, etc. You don't leave without a pair of these. This is a surprisingly light but sturdy bulletproof vest. We are already inside one of the modules that has 32 cells, of which each one has a capacity to receive about 100 people deprived of their freedom. Although these numbers may vary, it is very shocking to see it up close. Criminals sleep in a 4-tier bunk system without any kind of mattress, and once people enter here, they will not leave until they finish their sentences. We're talking about criminals here with sentences ranging from 20 years to over 1,000 years. Literally, there are beings who did crimes such that they were given sentences of more than 1,000 years. Hence the saying that when you enter the sector, you do not leave until you finish your sentence, because everything, absolutely everything, is done in here. From going to the bathroom to washing up, everything is done here open. Another shocking fact is that the lights are never turned off here, not even to sleep, which makes you completely lose track of time.
That you're describing torture. What the fuck? I mean, everything he just showed is just torture. This is like, watch it in the original language with the subs as an option. Why would I do that? At least I can understand what the fucking translation is saying, instead of watching it with the original language where I won't understand what the fucking translation is saying at all. My man, yeah, my man said, bro, subs not dubs, dude. Will is right. This ain't a fucking anime, dog.
There are no clocks, so you don't know what time it is. It depends entirely on the schedules imposed on you by the custodians when they enter. Everyone has to be abducted. We can also see that everyone has the same uniform, and there are collective pots which they use to shower, to bathe, to do. We can also see that here there is a person from the medical team who comes every morning to leave pills for people who have some condition, who maybe are feeling some discomfort. Even their hearings, in case their sentences have to be extended, are done from here inside. I want you to pay attention to this. We are in the module, here are the cells, and right here is the fourth of face-to-face and notification.
Dude, what is happening in the world, man? This is like, dude, if YouTube was around during World War II, you bet your fucking ass would be doing concentration camp reacts. Like, oh my fucking Lord. YouTubers would be like, yeah, here we are in the Warsaw ghetto, which many haters are calling a ghetto, but I'm here to show you, I'm here to dispel the rumors that, like, it's a ghetto at all. You know what I mean? It's fucking nuts. What the fuck? This actually did happen with the Red Cross. True. That is true. They literally did. Didn't they go to Auschwitz? Yeah, Red Cross did do that. That is not wrong. That literally did happen. Fuck, man.
This is in case any of the prisoners have been accused of new crimes for which they have not been tried, that this may extend their sentences. So from Juan Perez, come here. They found you a new crime. They are accusing you of something else because they are informing you of all this, and then in this other room here, they do the confrontation, they do the recognition of identity. Then they form different prisoners. They give them a number on this side. Okay, here, this is a glass that can be seen perfectly from there. From here to there, it is like a mirror. So the person who is crossing here can identify the aggressors, the accused, and without having set foot outside the module, this person is already accused of a different crime and can already spend many more years in here.
Like, that should be a red flag for anyone. Okay? The fuck? You bring in another eyewitness from a one-sided from a fucking one-sided mirror and be like, yeah, this is the guy. Why is the judge, jury, and executioner happening inside of the prison? Think about that. This process is not streamlined for a reason. It's not supposed to be streamlined because there's supposed to be a fucking trial. But we already saw the trial structure where they basically have fucking 530 people in one room, and the judge goes, all right, 32 of these guys actually had guns. The rest of them are also still going to jail. Fuck.
Likewise, here inside the module are the courtrooms where the accused can talk to their lawyers. All of that is respected here, and their new sentences are read to them all remotely. This is very impressive. So here they have the cameras for video calls. Here they sit those already sentenced. Here they listen. Here they can dialogue. Here they can talk. Here they can speak everything remotely. So I repeat, you don't set foot outside. No, this is truly amazing.
This is truly amazing, he says. You know, you don't... Once you're in prison, you're in prison. Very impressive. There's no, you've lost your humanity. You have been successfully dehumanized. This guy is out of control, man. Guys, the reason why I'm so critical of this is because these dudes, in your mind, you're thinking of like the most devastating criminal. You're thinking of like a fucking serial decapitator, child mutilator, okay? The problem is that those guys are getting the same treatment, or depending on gang affiliations, maybe sometimes even better treatment, than the dude who was arrested and detained permanently due to suspicions of aligning or being affiliated with the gangs. That's the problem. I hope you understand. This is nutty.
They are taking us to another area. And notice this detail. Every time you change area, the floor is made of stones on purpose to make noise in case someone escapes. Make every little step more than evident. Let's go up to one of the watchtowers. From up here, we can see some of the modules and we can appreciate the security rings. The highest walls are 9 meters of concrete, followed by 3 meters of electrified fencing. I was allowed to go up to the catwalk area, which is where security bodies are strategically placed to be able to see from above into the cells. Here we can observe some of the...
I mean, while it is absolutely extreme and has produced positive results for the population, there's a reason why he's so popular. Bro, you cannot fucking hide behind popularity. When we found out that, one, they underreport homicides, and two, it doesn't matter if the population that is not currently in prison are happy, thinking that, you know, things are fine. I'm explaining to you that it's short term. Okay? This is not a solution to rampant crime at all. But people do feel safer. Oh my God. People feel safer because they think the government that is doing this won't inevitably, on accident or deliberately, do it to them. Also, just because something is popular doesn't mean that it's good. Like, for example, Jim Crow was very popular. Slavery was very popular. It was so popular that motherfuckers who didn't even own slaves were fighting to preserve it. It's like, think about that for a second. Bro, this ain't your battle. Why the fuck are you fighting? This ain't your battle at all. You don't got no slaves. You're basically one step removed. Why the fuck are you fighting to preserve it? Bro, these are violent criminals, man. Why is that a red flag? Some of these guys are very dangerous, man. True, it's working. True, man. Oh, my God. There are so many dudes in this chat that, because of their American brain, they immediately lose sight of like the genuine human rights violations that we are seeing in front of our fucking eyes. So what if they're violent criminals, man? The fuck do you mean? What do you mean? You shouldn't do this to even violent criminals to begin with, because there's no way that these guys are reintegrating into society. It's Jover. When you fucking pack them up like sardines into metal boxes where the light is on 24/7, that's insane. There's no way any of those dudes are not reintegrating into society. They've locked up 74,000 people, okay? And studies conducted on the matter show that 70% of those who are detained are not affiliated with gangs at all. The fuck? What's the end point here? You're just going to arrest the entire country? As John Oliver says, 100% of prisoners are also human beings. Exactly. There is that too.
The methods that the prisoners use to sleep, as you will see in their welcome kit, and so we could call them. They are given a sheet, they are given their uniform, and they are given a towel. You can see that some choose to cover themselves with the sheet and put the t-shirts over their eyes to keep the light out so they can sleep, and still others choose to lie on their towels. We are now witnessing a cell extraction. This is an activity that is done once a day so that the prisoner...
They don't have cots, dude. They sleep straight on the metal. They use the fucking towel. You have an option. You either use a towel to cover your fucking face because the lights are on 24/7, or you fucking put the towel underneath you as bedding.
...can exercise. What is done is that the criminals are taken out of the cell in an orderly fashion, 5 by 5 or sometimes 10 by 10. They are placed in a row and handcuffs are placed on their wrists and ankles. Sometimes they are also joined together. They are then escorted to a designated area of the module where they will be surrounded by guards so that they can move around without the possibility of rebelling. Similarly, here we can see that most, if not all, of the guards...
It's so funny because 100% of chatters watch movies like, or TV shows like Andor, and we'll be like, wow, these conditions are fucking devastating for those people there, dog. What the hell? That's so sick that they violently rebelled. Meanwhile, they're seeing the actual thing happening in real life and going, dude, this is totally valid, actually.
Choose to cover their faces for their own safety and that of their families, because in many cases they themselves live in neighborhoods that have been previously ruled by gang members, so they do not want to have to pay negative consequences for the work they are doing here or for their country. Their loved ones. Oh, and see, from inside the cell, they put the handcuffs on their wrists first, of course, so that no one can push the door open once it is opened.
Bro, this literally is like, this straight up, I mean this in all sincerity, is just a power transfer from the gangs to the government. Like, the government is behaving like fucking gangs. That's it. And they don't even have the paperwork to back it up. Like, at least normally, under different circumstances, the monopoly of violence is supposed to be reasserted through some fucking convoluted legal process that doesn't get it right all the time. As a matter of fact, gets it wrong all the time. But this, in and of itself, is just like, oh no, we are the gang now. Like, oh my God.
And look, right now we are seeing how they are being escorted one prisoner at a time. Look how the chain is attached to their legs. All this with the intention of minimizing risks. Talking with a guard, I was just given a piece of information that shocked me, and that is that this group alone, which is behind my back, is very possibly directly or indirectly responsible for more than 200 homicides. What a blood-curdling...
Fucking come on, dude. Possibly, maybe, certainly.
...piece of information.
Indirectly.
Once they are formed and the perimeter is protected by guards, their handcuffs are removed so that they can move freely and thus exercise. It is quite frightening to be just a few meters away from murderous kidnappers without any kind of protection. Luckily, there are literally dozens of guards surrounding me. But I won't deny it, this is a scary experience. Looking at the tattoos some of them have on their chests and backs, we can see what gangs they used to belong to. Most allude to Mara Salvatrucha or 18, which are gangs, historically enemies. It is interesting to see the strategy of putting them together in the same cell to represent that the gang no longer cares about you. That has been left in the past, and this ideology has changed this system of separating the gangs by cells so they don't fight. Here they
Bro, yeah, here they have a united under a common enemy where they will definitely make one ginormous gang. This will never backfire. Certainly this process of dehumanizing literally some of the most violent criminals will not end up causing any unforeseeable consequences that yield really, really, really bad results for the government. This is so fucking insane, dude.
They are practically being forced to reach a peace agreement. They gave me a reading of profiles that list crimes they have committed, and it is very difficult to listen to them, and it makes your skin crawl. Rape, aggravated homicides, kidnappings, truly inhumane acts. I got to read profiles whose sentences listed 270 years, and this, if not more crimes, are added to the years they have left to live. And if seeing all these images, it is easy to suddenly be moved, to touch your heart, to say, wow, what harsh mistreatment inside the prison. But when you learn of the inhumane atrocities they have committed, it makes sense. Next, we will...
Dude, what? Yo, this guy is a fucking YouTuber, dog. We are so cooked. We are so cooked as a society. We're globally fucked. This little dicky looking ass motherfucker went to like straight up a concentration camp and is like, yeah, but guess what, dude? Like, guess what? They're fucking, some of the guys, they're really, really, really bad guys. El Diki. Bro, this makes me feel like a lot of people's problems with like Auschwitz and concentration camps wasn't the fact that the people thrown in there, like, or wasn't the conditions in the concentration camps and like the murder, but instead the fact that people were thrown in there and they weren't like actual criminals. They were thrown in there by the virtue of their ethnicity. So like, it does feel like a lot of people don't really have like a genuine issue with the morality of the concentration camp existing, just like who is thrown in there. Like, as long as it's like a bad guy, I've been primed into thinking like every single person is a bad guy, and maybe some innocent people, who cares? It's pretty crazy. That's Mexico's biggest YouTuber, by the way. I mean, it's nuts that this guy is just like doing this propaganda.
To enter an isolation cell, which is where the prisoners are sent when they commit an infraction. They are always locked with a padlock and basically consist of this space in which they have a cement.
What would be your answer, respectfully? No concentration camps. I'm going to take the unimaginable radical position of, how about no concentration camps? Like due process, a focus on rehabilitation and reintegration that is demonstrably more successful in creating a more prosperous society. Guys, I know. It's pretty wild. I know I'm crazy with it. Brave take. I think concentration camps are bad. I know. I fucked up. Please stop yelling at me. I'm so sorry. I know it. Just I accidentally said that.
Slab, they have a tub of water with a bucket, they have an access to drainage, and they have a bathroom. The only light that you have is a hole in the ceiling, and depending on the severity of your infraction, the number of hours you have to spend here will be defined. I can tell you that it is a very claustrophobic sensation, very dark and echo accompanied by a silence that weakens anyone, a very serious punishment. I do not want to imagine myself in a situation like this in which I would be locked up in this cell. The isolation cells have this hatch through which food is passed, and likewise with this small window through which you can supervise the person who is in there. You can close the door and check. Right now we have the camera.
Everyone on the internet is going to flame me for saying violent criminals can be rehabilitated. Yes, except I don't care, because that is a position that I genuinely do believe in, which is precisely the reason why I will defend it. That is a defendable position because it is my belief. Once again, I only get mad when people clip me out of context and act like I am saying something I don't believe in, like Twitch streaming is the most difficult job on the planet or some shit. That's what pisses me off.
Camera light on. Turn it off, it's completely dark, right? This is a traumatizing experience. If we talk about the food, they serve 3 courses of food. I asked to taste the breakfast, that's what I'm going to get. Now we can see that it consists of rice with beans, cream, and 2 tortillas. They tell me that breakfast and dinner is usually the same. It is usually the same dish. And at lunchtime, maybe they can serve some pasta. Maybe they can serve a rice with a different preparation, but they never really eat chicken or meat. That doesn't exist here. That doesn't exist here. What do we get, frijolito? We get cream. Each plate of food is put on the scale and has to weigh 1 pound. There is no distinction of any kind of rank here. Everyone, absolutely everyone, eats the same. Today you are probably wondering about the people who are here working, packing the food. They are also people serving time in prison. Yes, but they are what we might call low-risk criminals. Basically, all of them are in another prison, not in this one, because I repeat that this one is only for terrorists. All these people are under supervision, and they are brought in to work from other prisons to do some of their community service. As I was telling you, they never leave the modules, and this also applies to meal times. We can see that the plates and trays are left just outside the bars, and they are the ones who take them and hand them out. I wondered how they managed to prevent abuses and the food from being stolen so that someone is left without food. They tell me that all this is controlled from above, there is supervision, and they make sure that everyone is eating. And in the same way, we can see that there are custodians here watching that the food is
Why didn't he review the food? I thought he was going to do a food review. I mean, I think like we don't really need a food review. Let's be for real. Like that, the imagery alone was the review. You know what I mean?
distributed fairly once they finish their food. It is their job to rinse the dishes, to leave them relatively clean. They leave them there to be picked up, and then they can use that water to clean their mouths, to clean their bodies.
He pulled a Hideo Kojima and said, the food, here's my food review. The food weighs 1 pound.
We are going to talk now with a prisoner who has been involved in gangs since he was young. He has been here for a very long time and has a lot more to come. What gangs do you belong to?
To the MS-13.
Why are you here?
For multiple offenses.
Like what?
Homicides, deprivation of liberty, kidnapping, etc. How many people did you kill? I don't remember. So many were. We have committed different crimes at different times.
Bro, this literally is like a fucking IDF interrogation video.
How long have you been in prison?
I entered at the age of 21 and I am 47 years old.
How much time do you have left?
When God permits, I will go out. Don't get into criminal groups like gangs, organized crime. Nothing that is crimes or sins on this earth. Because the consequences are serious, even if they offer you heaven or earth. That is a lie of the devil.
It is very sad to hear these stories and to know that it is the case of many of those here who committed horrible crimes when they were just children. Their environment got them involved in gangs. The society they grew up in made them believe that this was the right path. Yes, it's very hard, it's very sad. And I mean, whatever time you're watching me, you may think that the gang is your only escape. There's always another.
Let me tell you something. That motherfucker is not rehabilitated, okay? You want to... There ain't no fucking way a dude put in a perma prison structure like that is getting rehabilitated after 26 fucking years of being in there. It's like, this is the thing that I try to advocate for that can't get through people's dense ass skulls, which is you put dudes in a situation like this, they're just going to become more hardened criminals. That's it. So the only way to ensure that they don't do more crimes, or at least like limit the amount of crimes that they're doing, is by limiting them around other criminals or people you have declared criminals. All this ends up doing is make those people who are like shopkeepers and shit, or arrested for suspicion of being a part of MS-13, all it does is make those guys also become criminals and do crimes to survive in prison. Like, this is no different than just like literally being like, you're suspected of a crime. Boom. Shot and dead. All the more ironic by the fact that MS-13 is literally a direct consequence of the American prison system and how fucking awful it is. That's how MS-13 was formed. They literally fucking formed it to survive in prison. It's mind-boggling. I don't understand how you can't, like, how you don't see this issue, how you don't recognize, like, you're just making the problem worse.
Other way, and you don't have to look for the easy way out. I leave this prison in El Salvador very shocked and with a strange feeling of relief. I can tell you that I have visited many prisons and have documented several for the channel. It gives a horrible feeling of helplessness when you visit prisons where criminals who have done horrible things live like kings. To be able to appreciate...
What the fuck? What prison have you visited where they live like kings, dog? This man is like, I'm a tourist for prisons. I love going to prisons. What a fucking freak this dude is. What the fuck?
These conditions and these measures in a maximum security prison gives a certain feeling of empowerment to a simple citizen like me. What feeling do you leave with?
No, his ideology is not all over the place, dude. No, he's literally a fucking maximalist. Like, he's saying these conditions are torturous, gruesome, awful, and it's great that we are subjecting people to said conditions. He's like the opposite of me in almost every sense of the word. He's looking at the devastation and going, this is great.
I'll read them down here in the comments. Many thanks to the people in the industry for opening the doors for me to be able to document this and share it with you. See you as always, you know, in a few days.
Fucking Christ, dude. I want to see these comments, but I don't know if I want to fucking... I'm Salvador and I'm young, and I remember the days of 2015, that time when it was scary to leave the house, even go to school, because you didn't know if you'd come home again. Were you even worried about passing the street? I remember the times where homicides were uncontrolled and nothing could be done. Bukele is really the best president. He managed to change a country full of crime and transformed into a safe space, safe place. Really, in these times, it makes me proud to say I am for him. There's a Venezuelan prison that's a mini version of Escape from New York. Only guards on the outside. They even host raves there. So many people in the comments now want something like this, but in Mexico. Yeah, but if you're a Mexican, that means you're going to jail too, dog. Like, that's what people don't understand. Hasan, as a South American, I find it quite curious what your position is in relation to this issue. You speak a lot from the theoretical field, which may sound good, but is so disconnected from reality. At least analyze the nuances. Do not have such a basic vision of the situation. In quasi-states like El Salvador or Peru, my country, where the core of the institutions is broken, you cannot adopt long-term measures. Oh, dude, both of these countries that we're talking about literally are in the situation that they're in as a direct consequence of measures like this. El Salvador became a crime-ridden country due to the American prison system and insane deportations, and is now repeating that same cycle that literally furthers the problem. Did you kill them then? Like, the solution is the final solution, by the way. Like, I think a lot of the people that watch this stuff and go, this is great, would probably be on board with killing them, right? Like, this is just like more torture before the inevitable demise. It's more streamlined. Just fucking kill them. They did that too. Like, I genuinely don't understand, because, like, I'm not saying let people go free when they do horrific crimes, right?